This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Don't miss the Vikings draft party at US Bank Stadium this Thursday. Tickets still available at Vikings.com/draft party. So come take in the action of the first round with us. KFAN is your home for draft coverage, presented by Heating and Cooling 2. That's heatcool2.com to book your service today.
It's the Minnesota sports calendar of calamity.
On this date in 2005, so this is the 20-year anniversary of the Whizzinator. Vikings running back Ontario Smith. Can you believe it's been that long? Caught at the MSP airport with a Whizzinator and a vial of dried urine. Looking at the Kevin Seifert byline story. I'm assuming we're going to have Seifert on tomorrow with draft day right around the corner, or opening draft day right around the corner. He's the byline on it. The Whizzinator. It's a story that you really can't make up. It's a story that leaves you a little bit speechless. And it's a story that's illustrative of the colorful nature of days that will live in infamy in Vikings history. This team has got as much infamy as it does fame. And this is a good example of it. I've lost track on where the Whizzinator is. And there may have been more than one Whizzinator. So there's the question of authenticity on the original Whizzinator. But beyond that, because for a while, I want to say the Whizzinator was on display on the wall in a Mankato bar. But I think that was a long time ago. So anybody out there who has updated information, maybe Dan Minnesota does, updated information on the current location of the Whizzinator, and how does that sort of device get authenticated as being the real Whizzinator? Because you don't want a knockoff Whizzinator. You want the one Ontario Smith attempted to smuggle through security at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. Remarkable story. If you have information, memories, Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line, 64686. That is 64686. Let's get to some texts regarding what's really been the central theme of the show today is reacting to Game 1, a absolutely, how do I put it, clinical Game 1 victory for the Timberwolves over the Los Angeles Lakers of Anaheim. And then a kind of familiar, played okay. I mean, at times played really well, but in the end lost Game 1 for your Minnesota Wild against Vegas. Let me quickly add that there's a problem that I detected on the NBA broadcast. Now, keep in mind, they got a lot of series, so everybody's being used. And in this case, I think it was Billis, who's obviously very accomplished. Jay Billis did color for the TV broadcast of the Wolves game. And how in a game like that you would get as consumed as he seemed to be by player reaction to foul calls, I have no idea. There were a couple times where, LeBron, I think he did get fouled on that one. Why the obsession? Why does analysis become evaluating every call that way? There's some calls worth evaluating. There's some there where there's more on the line. We say it's worth it. But honest to God, the players complain endlessly when it comes to NBA games, some to a greater degree than others. But even, it's almost like, why bother making a big deal about, and in this case, I think he's got a point. If the team's down 20 at the time, it doesn't matter. Analyze the play. Analyze the situation the team is in. That's, to me, let play-by-play guy call it and say, well, it looks like LeBron doesn't agree. And you just move on to whatever point you want to make. Because even if it's true, it's irrelevant. And it doesn't really lend credence to the idea of, well, I'm going to try to give you an idea, a concept of what is going on in this game. I've noticed it. There were several times within that game where that's what Billis became obsessed with. And I, for the life of me, don't understand it. He, of all people, knows how often players complain. And the notion that, well, it must be a good call or must be a bad call this time because he rarely complains. First of all, LeBron complains a little more than rarely. But whether he does or not, I don't know why you get obsessed with it, why you get lost in that discussion when there's so many other juicy, interesting, meaty items to get to, not the least of which was the shock of what took place in the opener. I said Friday on the show that I thought the Wolves had an excellent chance to win the series. I laid out a bunch of numbers that indicated the Wolves had actually been a better team than the Lakers, and you wouldn't know it on the basis of a lot of the commentary. But I think it's the classic case, and I don't know if this happens in hockey as much as it does in basketball. We tend to revert to names, and the Lakers have two huge names, and they're not done. I'm not here suggesting, like some people via the text line, that the Lakers are doomed. They're done. It's over, and it's going to end up being a sweep. That's a little delusional, although the Wolves did do some sweeping in the first round last year. That was Phoenix. But I guess I'd just like to think that there's more important, there are more crucial things to analyze than to get hung up on reaction to players. Now, in hockey, whatever reaction's there is going to be harder to see anyway because it's further away. They got helmets on. Basketball can be a little bit more intimate in what it shows in that regard. But I for the life of me, don't understand why we have to lose our minds over each call individually and lose the larger thread of, well, why are the Lakers in this position? What has happened in this game that has surprised us? Can it be sustained? Is it something that the Wolves can do in games, in a game 2 or a game 3 or a game 4? Is this a one-off kind of a thing? That interests me a lot more than, well, I think you're right. I think he did get fouled on that play. You're down 17. What's the difference? It doesn't matter. But there's a lot of that goes on. Not as much in the NHL, I don't think. Is there?
Well, if we were going to see any reactions like that, last night would have been it, because there were how many calls and how many times did Kaprizov get cross-checked in the back,
right,
with just nothing happening, like completely swallowing the whistles, the officials last night. At least I thought so. And that's still coming from someone that was disappointed in the way that it went down, but I can obviously say that there was a lot of missed calls, especially Vegas this way.
This is from Christopher out of Mound. The difference between the Wolves and Wild, the Wolves can rise up and excel at a higher level and be mentally stronger. The Wild is who they are. No ability to be mentally stronger and play at a higher level. Wild are so aggravating. That's Christopher out of Mound. The Wolves will have a better than 50% chance to win game 2, but not much. Obviously, the Lakers will come out aggressive. Dan, the Whizzinator was auctioned off in 2009. That's Dino checking in. We'll have to look this. See if you can Google the Whizzinator auction 2009 and see what happened to it. And I wonder how much money would you be willing to bid to gain access to the original Whizzinator? And then what do you do with it? Do you mount it on the wall? Do you put it on the fireplace mantle?
Do you use it?
Well, yeah, I guess you can't rule that out either.
So here's, I never Googled this one before, the Whizzinator auction 2009. So you know how you Google now and there's like the AI overview of it tries to tell you?
Yes. Which is sometimes accurate, sometimes not.
So pinch of salt.
Right.
But in 2009, the Whizzinator, the device famously caught in the airport in 2005, was auctioned off at the Shakopee Auction Center.
Oh.
The winning bid was?
I'm going to say the winning bid for the original Whizzinator was $25,000.
Not even close. Lower.
$750.
What a deal.
$750? That's a bargain.
That's according to NBC Sports, according to the AI overview. So take it for what it's worth. $750.
I wonder in the Whizzinator pecking order. I mean, how many how many others have elicited higher bids than the $750? I don't know. So we don't know who got it, right?
According to Sean Jensen of the St. Paul Pioneer Press, the item has been acquired by someone named Matt Little, an owner of Buster's Sports Bar and Grill in Mankato. So that was where I thought. I knew it was in Mankato for a while, but I thought somebody, maybe it's still, is that place still exist? Buster's, did you say, in Mankato? Buster's.
See if Buster's still exists. Could be.
Nope.
No, it's long gone.
It's all gone.
I wonder who got it in the auction. Another auction. That's the next auction, right? You auction off all your stuff. It's like it's the famous auctioning off of the stuff from KFAN, the restaurant, back in the day. Well, actually, I don't think there was much of an auction because I don't think there was much left. That's another story for another time. Do we want to put $1,000 in somebody's hand? We have the opportunity to do that right now.
Let's do it. The fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with our national cash contest. Head to KFAN.com. Enter the keyword happy. The keyword is happy. KFAN.com. Keyword happy.
Russo Radio in about 15 minutes.
Protect.
Show us your purple preset for a chance to win Vikings draft party tickets. Set KFAN as a preset on the iHeartRadio app, new and improved. Screenshot it and post it with the hashtag KFAN purple preset to your social media. And make sure to follow and tag KFAN. Winners will be DM'd daily. Get full rules at KFAN.com. Keyword contest.
So the best we can get to is the likelihood that we know the bar closed that once made a successful bid on the Whizzinator that doesn't exist, and then apparently there was a private auction after that. So it's in the hands, no pun intended, of some private individual who has not come forward. Maybe they're listening to the show today. If they want to text, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line at 64686. Remember, he was going to be this. He proclaimed himself, I think, the sod, the steal of the draft. That was the bit on him. And he was a talented player. He had some ability. I can't remember that many memorable Ontario games. And then obviously the Whizzinator stuff kind of got in the way. But had a moment or two. Speaking of Vikings, apparently they had some sessions today. The off-season program opens today. And we were told this is how insane it's become in the National Football League. Confirmed that J.J. McCarthy was in the building. And it's almost like it's becoming this thing where does he exist? I mean, do we know if he even exists? Well, let's see him. Can you produce him for us? Seems a little out of control. Maybe it's something we can talk about with Seifert tomorrow. And there was more talk about the fact that the Vikings still have not figured out what they want to do with the backup quarterback spot. And the head coach did not rule out draft, free agency signing, or trade. And who is it? Who does Sam Howell play for? Is it Seattle? I think Sam Howell is a member, because that name's come up as a guy that might be tradable. You probably wouldn't have to give up much for him, and he is viewed as a guy who would be a legitimate backup quarterback candidate.
It is Seattle.
Sam Howell, yeah. So I'm hoping with Seifert there'll be more about the draft tomorrow than our off-season has begun officially. We had somebody, were you here Friday? I don't think so. We had somebody who was accusing Gessling of not doing his job, that the Vikings had already had off-season workouts because he wanted to know how McCarthy had looked. And the problem with the premise was the workouts haven't begun, like in any sense that anybody could really look at them, or team events, right, that involve everybody getting out on the field. And he was convinced that it was happening, and that Gessling apparently wasn't even aware of it, which, as far as I know, is false. I think Gessling's pretty much on top of all of that. So There we go. But apparently you can rest easy. JJ is real. He allegedly has regained a lot of the weight he lost after the procedure, the surgery, and then the second surgery. And it's full speed ahead. Other than your guy, A-Raj, still hasn't signed with anybody, right? He has still left, to that extent, the door open. And did I tell you, I mentioned it on air, who's the president of the Green Bay Packers?
Well, Mark Murphy for
right?
now.
Yeah, Mark Murphy. He apparently was at on some Packer Rube tour where he, I guess in a kind of an offhanded way, predicted that, I don't know how, but somehow, some way, I still think Aaron Rodgers is going to end up with the Vikings. So we were trying to figure out, is that him trolling, him just playing because he knows that it's going to get people going? Is it something he might actually believe? There are some conspiracy theorists out there who believe it is going to happen, that somehow, some way, he's going to end up here. And I'll ask you the same question that Garzi and I talked about Friday. I don't think there's any way. I've said I was ready to flirt with bringing him in here as the starter for a year. You know, take a shot at it. Columbus took a chance. You know, why not the Minnesota Vikings? But I don't think even I could countenance the idea of convincing yourself individually as the head coach, organization collectively, that if we pay him $10 million, he's willing to come in here as the backup. And he'd be a good boy as a backup. Wouldn't cause any problem. He'd be on his best behavior. The quarterback whisperer would be able to tame him and control him and deal with him in a way that no other coach ever would. It's, in theory, an absolutely delicious idea. But I don't think in good conscience I could recommend it, because I don't think, even if Aaron Rodgers convinced himself that I'd be the good soldier, I don't think he's capable of sustaining that. Do you? I don't think there's any chance.
If there was a journeyman quarterback that has been around and he was starting for a little bit and now he's not, and he said, I'll take $10 million to be the backup, I would believe it without thinking about it. This is not a journeyman quarterback. Aaron Rodgers wants to play football.
He does.
And I think every day, I think I said this like a month ago, every day that goes by that he's not signed, to me, sets my alarms off even more that he's coming here. Because you would think if the Vikings just said, no, JJ's our guy, he would sign with Pittsburgh. And I think he just said on McAfee the other day, like, they didn't give me a deadline, Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I'm talking with Tomlin.
Milking it. Yeah.
So we're basically just waiting for...
Well, the interesting question will be, is there going to become a point where Pittsburgh says, well, bleep you then, we're not waiting any longer?
Well, that'll be the tipping point.
And that might be the tipping point, and who knows what happens at that point. But I think he might be willing to retire. I think there is also that possibility as time goes on. We'll see. But it is interesting fodder for sure. If you have questions for Russo, Dateline Vegas, I'm sure he's in the presidential suite. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. Wild lose the opener of their first round best of 7 series with Vegas. Game 2 can be heard tomorrow night, of course, on the Fan. And if you can have questions actually beyond just the Minnesota Wild. I want to ask him about what we discussed on Sunday briefly, which was that one of the games over the weekend on TNT, their broadcast crew wasn't at the site, which I just don't think that's... I know it's not unprecedented. In fact, somebody said the baseball season opener in Japan was the same way. It's the playoffs, man. I just think that's a bad look. We'll see if Russo knows anything about that. And we'll get his reaction to the opening game and what kind of adjustments he expects the Wild might indeed try to make. 64686, Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. And we will touch upon the A section today. The Pope passes away, Pope Francis, and Gerald Posner has written extensively on the way things work at the Vatican when a new pope needs to be selected. And more than that, he has reported a lot on the, I guess you could say, the legacy of Pope Francis himself, and even some efforts on this particular Pope's part to clean up some of the, shall we say, business and financial excesses over the centuries that the Vatican has apparently been quite known for. So all of that with one of our favorite A-section guests, Gerald Posner. That is scheduled for just about 5:30.
If you want to chime into what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. So let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That is 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
Yeah, I'll entertain a number of texts for our 4:30 guest. In fact, a number of good ones have already come in. Russo Radio joining us from Las Vegas. What is, Russo, what's the off-day activity here? Do we have like a skate? Do we have a semi-practice? What did the Wild do today?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, T-Mobile's booked for wrestling tonight, so they didn't want to, I don't think, trek out to Summerlin again. And so they used today as a recovery day, work out at the hotel, meetings and things like that, and then they'll all get on the ice tomorrow. But yeah, no practice today.
Brett Blake,
some of the guys, I do think, some of the scratches went out to skate this morning.
Gotcha. Well, Brett Blakemore wanted to remind me while you were chatting that he will be watching,
of course,
that wrestling from tonight in Vegas. Will you be there too?
Oh yeah, I'll be front row, center.
I'll look for it.
I think I'll find something else to do. And I actually did go to Monday Night Raw in Des Moines once.
Did you?
Yeah. Alicia Fox, the wrestler. I think I saw her last. Oh man, I can't believe I'm about to say this on the radio. I think I saw her last match ever. I was down there. I can't remember. I think if it was down there for the playoffs, for the Iowa playoffs, or if it was Zach Parisi's rehab game or what it was. But I met her at the bar at the hotel the night before, and she left me and Dan Myers tickets, and we were like second row. From the ring, you could and we didn't tell anybody, and we got so many texts that night from people that were watching Monday Night Raw that saw us front row there. So, but yeah, then Alicia had a little bit of a meltdown. It was essentially that was the end of her career that night. We saw her last, I think, match.
Was it an entertaining evening?
Yeah, it was. It was fun. It's always interesting, like watching the production. It's so much more entertaining, I think, on TV. And where it's a total show there in person, it's quick. The lights go off. It's just like TV timeouts that you see in football, basketball, hockey, all that stuff. Only much more, of just getting ready for the next match. You realize what an absolute, acting job it is when you're actually at the wrestling.
There's a non-zero chance that I was there that night in Des Moines. So yeah, might have been
in the crowd. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, Russo.
It was fun. It was a good experience. Won't do it again. Actually, you know what? I did go and I went at Bridgestone Arena once too.
Really? I had no idea you had this side of you. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, I know. Who knew?
All right, give me one legitimate reason to overreact to the Wild's first loss, and maybe a reason that everybody should calm down and not, take it all that seriously. One of each.
Well, probably the same answer for both. I think that the Wild at 5-on-5 actually played with a better edge and easily could have won that game. It was a 50-50 game that they lost. So that's one reason in a short series to overreact, and it's one reason to also underreact, right? I mean, the Wild played well enough and showed that they could play with Vegas, but unfortunately for them, at the end of the night, the result was familiar. This is a team that's lost to Vegas 6 games in a row. They've lost 10 of their last 12 against Vegas. There's just something about this Vegas team. Like, I watch Vegas a ton, and there's just something about this team. Like, I've watched so many games this year for a team that's won 50 games, and it just feels like there are games where they're not dominant, but yet at the end of the night, they always have the 2 points. And they did it to them again last night. They're a deep team. Their fourth line has 30 goals on it. Brett Howden had 22 this year, and he's their fourth line winger, and he scored twice last night, including the empty netter and the winning goal. He could fly. That's something the Wild don't have on their fourth line. They have a couple wingers in Trennian or Brazo that just don't seem to have the ability to score. So the bottom 6 last night was definitely a reason for concern. Top line was good. You'd like to see some more shot volume for Kirill. Only had 3 attempted shots, 1 on net. But he played well with Matt Boldy and Eriksson Ek. I do think that we're going to have to see some shuffling of the lines tomorrow night. Their bottom six wasn't very good. Hartman was great and was elevated in the game. John Hines, we just met with him. He talked him up big time today. Loved his game. So that tells me that he's going to be elevated in the lineup. Maybe he's on that. What I'd like to see tomorrow is Goudreau go down to the fourth line or the third line right wing. Hartman center the third line with Foligno and maybe Goudreau on the right. Put Rossi back up to the second line with Johansson and Zuccarello, and then figure out the fourth line from there. Either Rossi's got to be elevated or find a different line, because this is just not working with him as third line center. He played 12 minutes last night. It was a total non-factor in the game. Wasn't very good. Didn't get into the fight. Nyquist was, I thought, absolutely invisible last night, and worse than invisible, actually visible. There was one play where he dumps the puck and then had no interest in going to get it. And in a game where the Wild had 54 hits, I didn't see a guy that really wanted to get into the battle last night. So we'll see if, Hinostroza comes in. I don't know if after trading for Nyquist to help them in the playoffs, if they would take him out this early. Obviously, he is a penalty killer, but this series doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of penalty kills anyway. So we'll see. I'll be interested to see what the lineup changes that John Hines has in store tomorrow night, because he indicated there could be some.
Now, speaking of Goudreau, Pete from Woodbury with a very angry text wants to get your reaction to it. Could you please ask Russo if he asked the coach about the two blatant clean face-off losses involving Goudreau that led to 2 goals within seconds? He got manhandled. He actually went down to make it a quick 5-on-3. No one mentioned it on the telecast or the postgame or in the Star Tribune today. He needs to be responsible. That was the game. 2 crucial face-off losses.
100% agree. It was in The Athletic, so I suggest
he needs a subscription.
Subscribing.
Yeah,
I know. It was a huge part of my piece today on those 2 face-offs. Now, the one that he turned into the 5-on-3, I will say I think that was a blatant penalty. Thomas Hertl, it was, look, you see interference on lots of face-off. That one was a blatant, not even a pick. He picked up Goudreau and put him on the ice, and that's why the goal happened, because all of a sudden Goudreau can't get to the middle to front Shea Theodore. Now Marcus Foligno is in no man's land, and he has to make a quick second decision on, do I go to Shea Theodore or do I stay on Dorofeev? And unfortunately, Marcus went to Shea Theodore, and it left Dorofeev completely wide open. I think in hindsight, it's easy for us to say from the press box or from watching on TV, but this is a split-second decision. But I think in hindsight, you'd love, Marcus to stay on his guy there on the flank, because that's where the dangerous shot is coming from. Knowing the fact that Gus is going to be, and the shot blockers are going to be looking at Shea Theodore all along. So, but I don't disagree. I mean, look, Goudreau's won some big faceoffs down the stretch here. But last night, on a night where Eriksson Ek won 21 of 31, and Goudreau was 8 of 15. But it's always, what are the circumstances? And the 2 biggest faceoff losses of that game both wound up in their net.
Eriksson Ek was off the ice for one of them, correct?
Yeah, and it was a huge moment. I mean, The only penalty of the game for the Wild.
Exactly.
Eriksson Ek takes a high sticking penalty that was, also kind of bogus, because he was getting tripped up, and that's why the high stick came up. But because he's not on the ice on a night where, he's, dominant in the faceoff circle, Goudreau has to take that draw. And it winds up costing them, like we've seen so often, 5 seconds into the power play. So, it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of penalties in this series. Of last night's officiating is any story from it, although you get different referees every game. But if you're gonna only be on the kill 1 or 2 times, you surely can't get beaten by a goal 5 seconds in. And that was the story of the game last night. The Wild had the edge at 5-on-5. They essentially had 1 power play, even though they had 2 power play goals. One was the empty netter. They scored on theirs. Yeah. And the Wild had their 1 power play and didn't even get a shot on theirs, and in a game that they had to. And so special teams, even though there wasn't a lot of it yesterday, turned out to be a pretty big story.
Yeah, it's in the playoffs. That's all it takes, right? Is 1 either way. I mean, 1 and you don't take advantage of yours, they take advantage of theirs as a team that does it, and that's what's hard to me, and I think almost exhausting about this team is, I feel like, I'm not saying every loss every year in the playoffs is the same, but I feel like there is a broken record aspect to this a little bit. Like, okay, a play here, they do one thing there, and you go, well, yeah, that's what the good teams do, or the best teams, they win those a greater share of those kinds of games.
No doubt about it. And this is a battle-tested team that they're playing. 17 Cup winners from a couple years ago. They've won more playoff rounds than anybody in the league the last number of years. And, what I will say, one thing I didn't love about their game last night, and it's going to sound like a criticism, but, I just felt it was too safe, and I know they've got to play a certain way to want to win and all that stuff. But I think that because of the last 6 weeks of having to really scratch and claw to try to win games with the injuries that they've had, it's become a habit where they don't want to just go take a game. And I think the only way that they're going to win a playoff round against the Vegas Golden Knights is if they come out and set the tone early.
It's a fair point.
And I just feel like they've become the safe team. And last night they played well. But what's it get you at the end of the night? Now they got to win 4 of 6 games against, to me, the biggest contender right now, maybe other than Colorado in the West. So, it was that game was a 50-50 game. The Wild could have won. They didn't, though. And so it's a familiar start to the playoffs.
A 507 guy writes, hey, I love Zeev and his future, but felt like he was forced into big spots. Why not let Faber stay on the power play one instead, which amuses me because, the Zeev terrorists were bitter when we didn't force feed him in the last game of the regular season. What did you make of Zeev's play last night?
Yeah, I also don't disagree. Wow, I'm becoming me and the fans. We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
It's scary. Who knew? I don't disagree. But if you're going to play Zeev, you got to put him on the number 1 unit. That's why he's in the lineup, right? But I agree with you. And this is why they didn't want to play him in game 82 because of, just the concerns of the mistakes that he's going to make. And right now they've sort of made their bed. I think it would be a horrific, message to all of a sudden just pull him out of tomorrow night's lineup. I think he at least got to give him another chance and just hope that he continues to get better and better. I think the biggest thing that he needs to do, and I talked to John Hines about this and asked it this way today, and he agreed with me, is I think he's got to sit down with the coaches today and go over every one of his shifts like I did this morning and see where he's got to be a little less aggressive, a little more NHL-like than NCAA-like. And what I mean by that is that he did a lot of things last night that you can get away with the NCAA that you can definitely not get away with on the NHL. And it really almost cost him a number of times. I mean, the Jack Eichel breakaway, the Mark Stone, that one play on the power play where he takes a sort of a bad route to try to stop a puck. The puck gets behind him and then he's the first back checker. And while everybody else is supposed to go for a line change, he's supposed to go and retrieve the puck. And all of a sudden he starts going to the bench to change. And thank goodness everybody on the bench basically yelled at him to get back on the ice and go get the puck. But at that point, Mark Stone had a sort of a 2-on-1. So he was put in a tough position. The one thing, and I do what you said about the Zeev terrorists is hilarious to me because I looked at my mentions after his turnover last night on the 6-on-5, and everybody on my mentions is like, why is he even out there? Why are they putting him in this position?
Yes.
And all week or two, I've been, getting it's disgusting that he wasn't in game 82 or that they were even considering not playing him in the playoffs. But this is the issue is that, he's playing the Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas. He's 19 years old. He's fresh off a college rink. These are things that you learn over an 82 game season on how to become, the difference between college hockey and professional hockey. And so last night he made some mistakes. We definitely saw some moments where he looked, and acted like the guy that we know that he's going to eventually become in the National Hockey League, but it's going to take time. But they've put him in this tough position. But I asked John Hines to the person's question because I was talking to Joe Smith about this all last night after we got done with the game. And about just how weird it is that, you give Faber this $8.5 million contract. He was Rookie of the Year candidate last year. He's had this unbelievable last month and a half. And here in a position on a 6-on-5, you don't put him on the ice. And instead you're putting this 19-year-old playing his first game that winds up we're Monday morning quarterback, but makes the big mistake. And so it's this bizarre little back and forth. And it is Monday morning quarterbacking because we all know me included, that if Faber's out there and not Zeev and the Wild don't score there, we're all saying, well, why you have Zeev in the lineup? Why are you not putting your best offensive defenseman? So I get look, we're all playing the result. He turned the puck over to one of the best defensive forwards in the league. It was a great read, but to me, it was a flubbed pass anyway. But the irony of that play at the end is that was the exact Dorofeev play. Like the goal by Dorofeev, Shea Theodore goes up the gut, shot fakes, gives it to Dorofeev for the umpteen nut. Here, Zeev almost does the exact same thing, only his play is read perfectly by William Karlsson, and it turns out to end the game. So I think Zeev's going to continue to get better. I didn't love his game last night like a lot of the fans did. But at this point, I don't think you just pull him out right now for Johnny Merrill. I think you got to give him at least one more chance and just hope that he's just going to, with coaching off the ice today, just get better and better. And I have faith that he will. I just don't know if right now in the playoff series is the time that you want a 19-year-old cramming for a test,
Mike in Chaska, can you ask Russo if Hartman's reputation of embellishing is what maybe went into the 2 missed calls against him?
100% agree again. Wow, this is
the callers or the texters are on it today.
Wow, it's if everybody listens to the John Hines presser when the Wild put it on wild.com later, you're going to see every single email that you read to me today or text was a question that I had for John today.
There you go.
And that was one of the big ones. Like, I definitely think that Ryan Hartman's reputation is hurting him with the officials. Like, I think he's got a reputation of being a bit of a prick. I think he's got a reputation for diving, whether that's fair or not. And I definitely think that referees aren't willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. If Ryan Hartman cross-checked, who was it that cross-checked him yesterday? Was it Whitecloud, Hannafin, Haig? I can't even remember.
I don't know.
One of those guys. Yeah. If Ryan Hartman cross-checked one of those guys like he did last night, he might be in Gary Bettman's office today. Like in the first period, there were 2 plays where I thought he should have drawn interference penalties that he didn't get the benefit of the doubt. So, I mean, he's made his bed here. Ryan's earned this reputation. But John took the positive route on this today. And what he said is that he loved is that, and we all know this from watching him for 4 years here in Minnesota, is that he's got a tendency to fly off the rails when he is battling with referees. And we saw that his 8-game suspension that he got in Ottawa was exactly like that. He was battling with Garrett Rank that entire second period, and Garrett was looking at him, and then he took it out on Stützle in the faceoff circle and earned himself an 8-game suspension. Last night, he had to battle 2 teams, the Vegas Golden Knights and the refs, but he didn't lose his composure. He continued to play well. And because of that, he really elevated his play and showed again that Ryan has shown in every playoff, by the way, that he's been with the Wild, is that he is a playoff player. And that's why I think that he's going to be elevated tomorrow night, whether that's third line center, whether that's second line center. I think that we're going to see Ryan get a lot more ice time yesterday. And he was really good yesterday. Both the goals, he really played huge integral parts, on last night.
Russo Radio from Vegas. The Wild will take on the Golden Knights in Game 2 tomorrow night, right here on the Fan. Give me a sense of the Heinze approach when it comes to making either line changes or other changes game to game compared to what we might have gotten accustomed to from his predecessor.
Yeah, he's much more likely to make in-game changes than Dean ever did, and especially early. He really recognizes early in games who's going and who's not, and reacts accordingly. I really liked some of the moves that he made yesterday. I thought that he picked the right time to elevate guys like Hartman. The one thing that concerns me is that third line. Like, it is very clear that they are not happy with Marco Rossi right now. They are not. I mean, he is just his role is getting less and less. They're basically only putting him into situations where he could, we talked about that Vancouver game. He basically doesn't play even strength minutes in that third period, the last 12 or 13 minutes, but gets on the power play. So they're recognizing that his skill set are, against Dallas, being on the 4-on-3 in overtime, last night being on the 6-on-5 after not getting a lot of even strike ice time, which tells me that they don't think at 5-on-5 that he's able to function at this level in the playoffs.
That's scary.
And really down the stretch in important games. Like I don't think they feel like he has the pace to really break down defenders and beat guys and things like that. And that's why, I've been saying all along that I really don't see a long-term future of Marco in Minnesota. And I think that could be this summer. And last night was another example of it. He just, he never really got into the fight. And I'll just be really interested on the way that he's deployed tomorrow night. Like, to me, he's useless if you're putting him in the role that he's in right now. And so you either got to almost move him up and give him that opportunity. But since Eriksson Ek's been back, Rossi's definitely taken a backward, trajectory. And that's shocking for a guy that really was one of their top scorers throughout the regular season. But he just really the last 2 months, he just has not been great. And I don't know if he's worn down or what it is, but, to ask to get back to your question on Hines, I think that's stuff that he's recognizing right now, and he's making him pay for it. And so, but for the most part, I think that John has really come up with the good answers here, and we'll see tomorrow night. Let's be honest, in both the St. Louis and the Dallas series, the last two with Dean as the head coach, I think we all would agree that he was really late to the party when it came to adjusting. Remember Craig Berube, after one loss, did an overhaul change, changed goalies, changed everything. Last year in the Dallas series, I think a lot of us believe that Pete DeBoer sort of manipulated the referees and things like that to make it like 2 years ago in the Dallas series, make it like the Wild were the dirtiest team in history. And that's why the Wild, I thought, did a really good job last night of not of staying, between the whistles and not getting into it with the referees, even though they had plenty of reason to be frustrated.
Larger NHL question, as I understand it, one of the TNT games, I think it was Saturday, the broadcasters were not on site. Do you A, know if that's true? And B, how is that possible? Somebody pointed out to me that actually Major League Baseball season started in Japan, that they did a studio bit there, but to me it's the playoffs. I can't imagine that goes over well in hardcore hockey circles. What do you know or think about that?
No, I don't think so. And this has been an issue with Turner all year long. Not necessarily their quote unquote talent, but their truck has been pretty much, from what I understand, done out of Atlanta. And it's actually created a little bit of a delay where, you're just think about this, logically, if you've got your studio show, your truck, all the technical stuff being done remotely, and you're only sending maybe an on-site director or producer, and I could be talking out of my butt here, but this is the way it was explained to me, or at least earlier in the year, and you got your color analyst, basically talking to the quote-unquote truck that's usually on site, but they're actually in Atlanta, and you're saying, get me this replay. Well, there's actually a little delay that's happening that's all of a sudden leaking into live play. And it's created a couple of issues this season, especially on face-off goals. In fact, that would really be a problem for the Minnesota Wild, since it feels like they give up a goal off a face-off, every night within seconds.
Wow.
So, I just don't think it's a great precedent. We've seen that before in Olympics. Like, I've watched, swimming and water polo and things like that.
That's
where,
true.
I know that like Kenny Albert is calling that from, Stamford, Connecticut, rather than on site in Beijing or Paris. Like, you just know that type of stuff. But to do it in the playoffs, it's just such an obvious cost cutting measure that I just think is pretty, for a league that's, that wants to be part of the, Big Four. It doesn't, I don't know. You can ask Johnny if that's happening in the NBA too, because obviously there's a lot of Turner there, but it just feels like Turner's just been doing that all year long and cost cutting.
A couple texts to wrap things up with that are really not necessarily hockey questions or strategy. Tell Russo thank you for revealing that the WWE is fake. Heartbreaking. You've ruined.
I know. I hope I didn't ruin. I hope I didn't. Yeah, I know. I hope I didn't ruin this for some kids.
Yeah, some people.
That was a great Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Larry David got into it with Thor, and he runs into Thor's kids, and he's like, your dad's a big. Wrestling is fake. Your dad's a phony. Your dad's just like an actor. Just ruined it for his.
That was a very good episode. And lastly, where's the last one I had for you? Thanks, Dan. You scared me off from getting an athletics subscription because of the price. Can I have one of your subscriptions? Excellent breakdown by Russo. Yeah, Guards and I both have 2 athletic subscriptions because we had when you guys merged with the Times, I've always had a New York Times subscription. So then you're supposed to be able to get it with just that, but I can't get rid of my other Just Athletic subscription from before. There's no way to get a phone. There is no phone number. There is no customer service. So we're both annoyed that we're double paying. So we're trying to give our extra subscriptions away. I will add, though, very quickly, whatever the price is, and I know you guys usually have some good rates early, I fully, and I'm not saying this just because Russo is on here, I fully recommend it's worth them. If you are a sports fan, it is 100% a good investment because the depth of stuff across the board, the seriousness with which you guys go about stuff, not just you, but a lot of other people, has been impressive. So I don't mind shilling for the publication in that regard, although I am still a little bitter that I've got 2 subscriptions.
Yeah, my mom, I think, does too. And I've been trying to figure out a way to cancel one of hers. But of course, she's like, I don't even remember the email.
That's it. That's the thing.
I'm like, it's like, so most people can't remember their password. You don't even know the email. So I don't even know how to begin to do it because, there is, like, you talked about the price. I do still, I mean, I'll be honest, everything has changed. So, but I still think if you click on like one story, there are usually deals.
Yeah.
And I think if you download the app, you get a certain amount of free ones a month too. So
is that right?
Okay. Give it a try.
Right. It's worth trying for sure.
There are other ways too, as you mentioned, like New York Times bundles,
yes,
Apple News.
Right.
I think there's many different ways now
more than ever. You're right. I think you'd be creative with it for sure. All right, have fun in Vegas tonight, and then we'll keep in touch as this thing plays out. Game 2 tomorrow night.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Take
man.
care.
Appreciate you. Russo Radio. Dateline Vegas. Game 2 will be on the Fan tomorrow night. Game 2, Wolves Lakers will be on the Timberwolves channel tomorrow night as well. West Coast games in both cases. We still have Gerald Posner to talk Pope at 5:30. Top 5 at 5 will include.
We'll talk about all 4 Minnesota teams, and I'll give you your viewing options for tonight.